Hello. Welcome back, everybody, to the Between the Lines podcast with Chris and Aiden. A lot of football happening this weekend. A lot of drama with front offices in the NFL. We had the national championship and some playoffs. We're gonna dive right into it. We're gonna start off with college. We had a pretty hyped up national championship game. Ohio State playing Notre Dame. Uh, Ohio State definitely favored by I think it was like 8.5 or something like that. So a favorable amount. Um, Chris, do you want to start first and give your thoughts, and then I'll jump in and we'll kind of go back and forth.
Yeah, for sure. So that game looked like it was getting out of hand early in the first half. Ohio State was kind of firing on all cylinders, and
Hmm.
they went into the locker room and they were getting the ball first to start the second half. And I remember Nick Saban said on the halftime show, like this could get ugly fast. And I mean, he was absolutely right. Notre Dame, other than their opening drive, was pretty non-competitive. So let's just say props to them for making it a game and having a chance. And when the game was
Yeah,
on the line with third down, Ohio State took a huge risk. They fired it downfield, but if you're going to take a risk, you got to throw it to your best player. Jeremiah Smith was able to get himself open and secure the catch, and
yep,
Ohio State wins the national championship. Ryan Day silenced some demons. I know he lost to Michigan, and that's a very big deal. There, it's going to hang over his head until he beats them. But they won the national championship, so you can't
yep,
ask for much more. Will Howard, Ohio State legend forever, even if he doesn't go on to amount to anything special in the NFL. Same with
yeah,
Jack Sawyer for that scoop and score in the previous round. Jeremiah Smith, he's only getting started as a Buckeye. Nice for them, really good team. But I just want to shout out Notre Dame real quick. They had a great year, especially
yeah,
as an independent where they're not coming from a big conference like the Big Ten and the SEC, and people aren't always favorable to them because they don't have a conference. They had a great year, and Marcus Freeman has shown he's one of the top college coaches, and wouldn't be surprised if he continues to get NFL interest just for the way that he conducts himself and holds his teams. They seem like a
yeah.
very fundamentally sound team. They play tough, they play hard, so props to him. Riley Leonard out of the transfer portal was a great get for them. They went to the national championship. I mean, I know they lost, but it's still a big deal. They made a lot of money for their school with revenue, all that good stuff. And this wasn't like one of those powerhouse Notre Dame's team that we've seen in the past that's littered with first round picks. So
Yeah.
props to them. Overall, I think it was a solid college football playoffs. I feel like it's a little too long. I don't know how you would adjust that, but college football starts in August and it's January 20th and the season's wrapping up. I feel like people are kind of moved on from college football at that point when all the other teams are done and we're already hearing about players declaring for the draft and transferring, and you still got the biggest game of the
Yeah.
year left. So I think they got to work on the format and the seating and schedule just a little bit, but I thought it was a solid first year of the 12-team playoffs.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I think what's interesting to me is your point about Ohio State, Chris. They did lose to Michigan. Ryan Day's getting a lot of heat. I gave him a lot of heat too, to be fair. I didn't like him. I didn't think he was a great coach. But what the 12-team format helped Ohio State with was putting them up against legit opponents, and they mopped the floor with them, in my opinion. I mean, you went into you played Oregon, and I mean it was more Jeremiah Smith, but you completely smoked them. Your defense held strong against Texas, and your offense was able to overcome. When Jeremiah Smith was locked up, you still put up I think 28 points or something like that. So that's very impressive. So you got to give props to Ryan Day. Um, like you said, Chris, Notre Dame. I want to break down that first drive to you. It sounds weird to say to me. That's one of the best drives I've ever seen from football. As weird and bold as that of me to say, it was 18 plays over 10 minutes long. Okay. And Notre Dame coming in as the underdog, knowing you have a powerhouse offense on the other side, just filled with all around talent, right? And Ohio State known for having these threats at every skill position. Um, this is exactly what they wanted to do. And I'm sitting there on the couch watching this happen. And I go, wow, this is really impressive. But then you look at the plays, right? I think Riley Leonard had 9 carries on that drive. Okay. because Jeremiah Love could not get anything going. The running backs couldn't get anything going. Although the run game was prominent there, all of it was from their quarterback. And as great as that was, you can't give Riley Leonard 30 rushing attempts in this game. You need him to stay healthy and throw the ball a little bit, right? So you couldn't get the run game going with your running backs. As much as I loved that first drive, it was actually so impressive. I thought we were gonna have a great game, but like you said, Chris, they pulled away. Because they had the Notre Dame had to switch something up instead of just feeding Riley Leonard up the gut with QB draws and power rushes because you got to keep your quarterback healthy, obviously. Um, Notre Dame tried that fake punt, which was bold. I think maybe they shouldn't have, but you have to try something to change the tides, and they did eventually in the second half with that fumble, and they kind of made the game really close. So respect to them. But yeah, I like the 12-team format. I enjoyed it a lot. I agree with you, Chris. Maybe it's a little too long. The transfer portal and all this other like quote unquote free agency stuff with college football overlapping with the playoffs is kind of difficult to keep track of it all, and everybody's kind of scrambling. So yeah, that's definitely things to clean up. But the concept of a longer playoffs is good for college football. I like it a lot because you get some of these underdog teams like Notre Dame was probably. I mean, I'm not saying everybody picked Georgia over them, but nobody expected Notre Dame to go this far, and they made a great example of what it takes for an underdog team to go all the way against some of these powerhouse schools. They beat Penn State. It was a very impressive season for them. Marcus Freeman gives me very big NFL vibes too, NFL vibes too, Chris. I agree with that. Maybe not this year or maybe next year. I don't know when that happens, but the way he holds himself is very impressive. He's very professional, and he although he's coaching college kids right now, we talked about Deion Sanders coaching NFL, like he's a great college coach. There's something about Marcus Freeman that really gives me NFL vibes, where the respect he gives to his players is as players and not just college students. Although he does have that aspect to him, which I think could easily transfer over to the NFL. But yeah, great overall college season in my opinion. This is probably one of the first seasons I was actually I know, Chris, you don't really watch it that much, but I didn't watch it for many years before this, where I was kind of on and off until the playoffs came around. But I was very invested in a lot of games um, in the regular season as well, and it was pretty entertaining to watch. Um, so yeah, college football continues to improve. So one person I really want to shout out, Chris. I don't know if you like him or not. I love Pat McAfee because I think he's just so entertaining for the sport. He's just a different energy. Um, it's kind of like that, uh, kind of like a comedian, I guess. If like a comedian was to commentate football, but he has a great energy. He makes like Saturday mornings really fun for me, so I enjoy watching him. Makes college football more fun for everybody else. It's around the campuses and stuff like that. So college football, great improvement this year. Looking forward to what they do in the future. But we're gonna move to the big boys now in NFL playoffs. We had two, no, we had four games, obviously. Um, we're gonna start with the NFC. Um, we had the Eagles going against the Rams. Now, Chris, Saquon Barkley is a monster, right?
Yep.
Do did you have any doubt that the Eagles would lose this game?
No, I mean, I thought that they were going to win. I did think it would be close, so I'm not surprised that came down to the last drive where the Rams had an opportunity to go down the field and
Yeah.
score. We haven't really seen anything that gives you reassurance from the Eagles' passing offense through the first two games. Now, I know that last game was kind of in a snowstorm, so if you want to put an asterisk next to that, sure. But they haven't needed it so far because of how dominant Saquon Barkley and I mean, he's one cut away from taking it to the house. Like you
Yeah.
saw in
Every
the
time.
fourth quarter
Every time.
when he hit the dagger touchdown, how he lined up next to Hurts, gave him a little look, and he was basically like, I got this. Hit
Yep.
one cut. So he followed Cam Jurgens on the pull block, set
Yep.
that block up perfectly, cut a little bit to the inside, and he was gone. He's electric. So you
Yeah,
can't stop him. Like I've said to you, you honestly you can't even contain him at this point. Like there were times on the Giants when you could bottle him up because their offensive line was bad and they had no passing game. You can't
yeah.
do that with the Eagles. They have an elite
There's no
offensive
line.
line, and Jalen Hurts is always a threat to pull it and run himself, even if he's not passing at a high level right now. I do think that Jalen Hurts disrespect is a little over the top from the NFL media, and um, I'm obviously close with a lot of Giants fans because of where we grew up and who I went to school with, and like they kind of bash him online. Like Jalen Hurts would be starter on pretty much every single team in the
Oh,
NFL, other than
100% he would.
a couple teams that are left. Um, we're only like 2 years removed from him having a four touchdown performance in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes. So I think we need to chill with the Jalen Hurts disrespect. But that being said, are going to need that passing offense because Cliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels have been cooking it up in the playoffs so far.
Yeah.
They took down the Lions, hung 45 on them, and it's not even like they're running a complex offense. They're just getting the ball out quick, and Jaden Daniels, when he needs to, has elite downfield accuracy to find guys. And um, we'll talk about it in the next game, but I just want to shout out De'Ami Brown. He's been in the headlines for stuff that's not his faults, and he's had a great playoffs. So I want to talk
Yeah,
about him when we get to that next game.
yeah, just quick comments about Rams Eagles. You know, we go back to the offseason. I've talked about this a couple of times as a Giants fan, right? I'm looking at this game. I'm so proud. I hate that it's on the Eagles. Again, I won't deny that. I'm so proud of him. I'm so happy for him. For Barkley. I'm rooting for Barkley so hard. He deserves all this stuff because we put him through hell, quite frankly. And I feel like we disrespected his name so many times. And of course he's gonna run for 2,000 yards and he's gonna lead. He's leading, in my opinion, this team to the NFC Championship game and possibly the Super Bowl. Um, Now I want to go back to the offseason real quick. Okay. The whole argument between Barkley and Joe Shane. So Barkley's saying, I'm the most valuable player on this team. I'm the weapon, right? And Joe Shane, quite frankly, saying, you are, but to me, the more important thing is the offensive line. Okay. So Joe Shane goes out and gets a couple pieces. Our line's still terrible. So Joe Shane does not prove the point of 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 the offensive line being more valuable because he can't hit an offensive lineman. Okay, so he can't build an offensive line. Barkley walks. Barkley gets his money. Barkley becomes probably the offensive player of the year this year. 2,000
Yep.
yards, rushes for 2,000 yards with the Eagles. Phenomenal season. Now, if you look at the other side, Barkley proved Joe Shane's point. Why? Because look at that disgusting offensive line he's behind, right? The GM for the Eagles, oh, I forget his name every time, completely killed it.
Howie
Uh,
Roseman.
Barry Roseman. I know you hate him, Chris, but Mekhi Becton's been phenomenal this year
Yeah.
for the Eagles at
Yeah, he
guard.
has.
The Eagles unlocked him. They keep, Jurgens replaced Jason Kelsey, and he's doing a great job. I'm not saying he is Jason Kelsey, but he's doing a great job. So that Eagles line is still elite, and see what happens with like Joe Shane's point of, oh, let's invest more in the line. Yes, you could do that, but keep the running back that could run behind that line because this is living proof. Both of them were right and wrong in their perspective. That's what I have to say about this team. Okay, Barkley is saying you got to pay me because I can help this team. Yes, it's true. But also, we don't have a line for you to help, right? What do the Eagles do? Hey, we got the best line in the league, arguably. Come play for us and we'll give you the money. Okay, great. Thank you. So he'll do that and he'll walk over and he'll run for 2,000 yards. It's as simple as that. When you put probably the best running back in the league behind the best line in the league, he's going to do this every single year. And you know what? It's sad that his prime, I mean, he's still probably in his prime to be fair, but he's definitely going to go down a little bit. Um, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't even imagine rookie Barkley on Philly with this line. It would have been so scary. Um, but yeah, I'm very happy for him. The Rams, tough conditions going across the country again. Like that, especially what's happening back in California right now, going to play in the snow. Stafford's a dog in my opinion. The dude has so many game-winning drives. Cooper Cup's a little older now. We got a lot of question marks on that offense, but Fair play to them. Yeah, we're gonna have a really good NFC Championship game, but we'll go into the other NFC game right now, which I think was one of the biggest upsets in recent history in NFL history. We got the lowest seed Commanders going against the Detroit Lions. Chris, go ahead.
When you say this is one of the biggest upsets in recent history, I completely agree, and I don't wanna bring my own team into it, but this reminds me of, the 2010 Jets, the 6th seed going into number 1 seed New England and knocking them off in the divisional round in their first playoff game. It's the same thing. You have a team coming off a bye that everyone thinks is gonna win the Super Bowl. The Lions had 15 wins this year, and the Commanders just went in and kind of blew the doors off of them with their passing game
Yeah,
and some, you know the Lions beat themselves too. You can't turn the ball over 5 times in a game and expect to
yeah,
win. I don't care if you're playing. I don't care if you're playing the Washington Commanders. I don't care if you're playing the Atlanta Falcons or one of those lower
yeah.
teams. You can't turn the ball over 5 times, including a pick six, and expect to win. It's just not going to happen. The Lions didn't execute on a high level on any side of the ball. Their defense didn't look good. Their offense didn't look good. They had Jameson Williams throwing a pass down 2 touchdowns in the 4th quarter, and it got picked off, like, I
Yeah.
just I think they got surprised by how much of a fight the Commanders put up. Because you look at last week, the Commanders, they snuck by the Buccaneers, right? Like, they had the doink that goes in, okay, maybe they got a little lucky, but they're not gonna come in here and outplay us, and they outplayed them on every side of the ball.
Big time.
Jayden
Yeah.
Daniels, you know, he may be, I forget what coach said this, maybe Fangio? Um, he may be a young
Oh yes.
quarterback, but his resume and just the way he plays, he's not a young
Tape
quarterback. I
says
mean, we've been
otherwise.
saying
Yeah.
it. Yeah, we've been saying it for a couple weeks that his poise is elite, and as the game goes on, he gets better. It's like anytime they need a big play, like they had that 3rd and 1 at the end of the game, and he gets a QB keeper, and he finds a way to pick it up.
Yeah.
Um, Really disappointing year for the Lions considering all the hype after their run to the NFC Championship. You don't know how long you're going to have a window in the NFL. Things change very quickly, and we're going into year 3 now, and they went one and done in the playoffs. Year 3 of them being good. I know Campbell's been there for a couple years, and they're going to lose both of their coordinators. Ben Johnson already took a job with the Bears. Aaron Glenn is, heavily rumored to go to the Jets, so we'll see what happens there. But I just want to talk about St. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and De'Ami Brown for a quick second. The way that
Go
the
for it.
Lions players have, kind of been acting has really rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm not saying I was rooting for them to get blown out, but I think a guy like Amon-Ra kind of got what he was asking for. Like, Amon-Ra has always made this, this big thing about where he was drafted and remembering all the
Yeah.
receivers in front of him, which is fair. But, like, you're a first team All Pro. Like, you're beating a dead horse. No one wants to hear it anymore. I know it's like the whole Tom Brady thing. Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th round. But Tom Brady's like the greatest football player ever, right? So
Mhm.
I don't think you need to keep coming out every week and talking about all the players that were drafted in front of you. And I don't think I
Yeah.
think it's disrespectful what he said about De'Ami Brown. Everyone's path in the NFL is different. And he was like, yeah, I see De'Ami Brown, or he didn't even say his name. He said, I see him standing over there. I don't remember his name. And he's not getting involved, not doing too much. That's just
He
disrespectful
remembered
as
his
hell,
name, by the
man.
way. He definitely remembered his name.
Yeah, it's childish and it's disrespectful as hell. It's corny. And shout out to De'Ami Brown for outplaying Amon Ra. That's the things you love to see in the NFL. I don't think any player really has any right to call out another player like that for performance or lack of performance because, you know, they're all high level athletes. You shouldn't disrespect someone like that. So I think
Yeah.
Amon Ra got what he deserved. You can't talk about another player like that.
Oh, Chris, let me jump in here real quick. Sorry, I just wanted to add another
Yeah,
comment
no,
about
go
this because
for it.
Amon Ra had a phenomenal year again. I don't think he had any drops, but it's the fact that he, like you said, Chris, he keeps talking off the field, right? Just let your game speak for itself, dude. Right? Be a little
Yep.
more humble, like you said, because he is a great receiver in my opinion, and he is proving that he should have been picked higher. But dude, that was what 3, 4 years ago or something like that. Who cares? Who cares? It's done now. Go make a statement that you're the best receiver in the league now, and don't say, "Oh, these teams should regret it" or whatever. Who cares? You're on a team now. You have a great year. Stop calling these people out. Just go play football. You know that's what I think.
That's what I'm
I'm an
saying.
offer you. And guess who
Yep.
did that this weekend? Yami Brown did that. He came up and said, "I'm not going to say anything. I don't care." And you know what he did? He balled out. Respect him, because yeah, quite frankly, he was a bust early on in his year. But did they have any QB play? Not really. And he was at number two, number three when Jahan Dotson was there and Terry McLaurin's still there, obviously. But he got a chance to step up, and he did big time. And Jaden Daniels, quite frankly, unlocked him. And fair play to him. He stepped up. He's going to be a huge factor against the Eagles, and if they go on to play in the Super Bowl as well. Um, so yeah, I think he's really earned a spot on this team as a wide receiver too. So yeah, if you have anything more to add, Chris, go ahead. Because I just want to make a comment about Amon
Yeah,
Ross.
look, like he's had a great playoffs. I mean, he was a non-factor in the regular season. They had Noah Brown, they suffered some receiver injuries. So I don't know where his place in the NFL is after this. Maybe he contributes next week, or maybe he's a ghost. Like I remember when the Seahawks were in the Super Bowl a couple years ago against the Patriots, and Chris Matthews, who no one ever heard of, had like
Yeah,
6 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown, and we've never heard from again. That could happen
yeah,
with De'Ami Brown, but for now, I'm just happy that he outplayed Amon Ra because I just thought that was really disrespectful. But
yeah,
taking a look at the AFC games that we had some good ones. So obviously we had Ravens Bills, but we'll start out with Kansas City and Houston. Game one about as expected. Kansas City's obviously. I don't think anyone was going to rightfully pick the Texans to win that game, regardless of other circumstances. Obviously, the officials are a big headline, so much so that Troy Aikman actually commented on it during the game, and the Texans players were pretty much saying we knew it was the refs versus us after the game. And look, I know that's true, and everyone can see it. You could see it. I could see it. We've been saying it. I don't think that the players and D'Amico Ryan said the same should be blaming the loss on external factors publicly. I don't think that's a
yeah,
good look, right? I know that it's pretty obvious that that's the case, but, focusing more on the game, right? We've been saying it, or at least I have been, that Travis Kelce was going to have a huge playoffs. This is who he is. He's a big time playoff performer. I think he went over 100 yards, had a couple crucial catches. They have a plethora of weapons. They have Worthy, Hopkins, Hollywood, obviously Kelsey, and then a nice backfield of Pacheco, P. Ryan, and Kareem Hunt. They have a lot to
yeah.
work with. They're really well rounded, and you have Pat Mahomes and a really good defense. So a lot to like about the Chiefs. Texans, another year going out in the divisional round. They're still the only team in NFL history that hasn't made it to a conference championship game, which is, I know they're an expansion team, but that's kind of crazy. I just think that the Texans need a little more help surrounding CJ Stroud with talent, especially on the offensive line.
Yeah, I would say the offensive line is their biggest need. I mean, Tank Dell's great. Um, Nico Collins
Probably need
always a stud.
another skill position player too because Tank Dell's
Well,
hurt and
I
Diggs
just
is hurt.
saw
So
Chris. I don't know if you just saw on Instagram that was I think it was posted yesterday. Joe Mixon. So here's a little article I found. Texans running back Joe Mixon says he's a great recruiter and mentioned that GM Nick Caserio is working on a big offseason move. Quote, I know for a fact Nick has something cooked up and fireworks will be here soon. Unquote. End quote. The rumor is T. Higgins.
I
Could
mean, they
T.
want T
Higgins go to the
Higgins for sure.
Texans? Right? I mean, is that leaves him or Nico on a corner too, which is absolutely disgusting. And I don't think T would mind that, quite frankly, because he stays a contender with a contending team at least. But I feel you got to beef up that line first to give Stroud a little more time. But yeah, we could go into him a lot. But yeah, Chiefs are the Chiefs, man. I mean, Kelsey stepped up as per usual. It's like him and Mahomes. Every time they get in the playoffs, they're just a different breed, dude. So yeah, they're just unstoppable. And now we can talk about this probably on Friday because we're gonna have a special podcast episode on Friday for anybody that listens consistently. I'm not gonna spoil anything until we get there, but Kelsey could probably retire if they go for the 3P because he goes on some historic run like this. He's already, I feel like, certified Hall of Famer, but um, he could go down as one of the best of all time, maybe the best of all time as a tight end position. Because every time he gets in the playoffs, we count him out like at least the past couple years. Oh, Kelsey died off. He's had some slow years, whatever. Um, and he steps up every single time. I think he had like 7 catches, something like that, 70 yards and a tutty. So great for him. Mahomes is always Mahomes. Yeah, so we're gonna have a great AFC Championship game, in my opinion. Um, different from other ones. So, but we'll talk about that in the future pod. Chris, you have anything else to add before we move to the next game? Because this next game I really want to dive into.
Yeah, I think we'll spend most of our time on this one. Just, the Chiefs. Uh, it's you can't really pick against them right now. I know we've had some different
Yeah,
opinions for this upcoming week, so I'll save that for Friday, and I think that'll be fun to talk about with our special guests. But it's the Chiefs, right? They got the NFL seems like it's on their side because of obvious PR that they get from Taylor Swift and all that good stuff.
yeah.
Obviously most people
Well,
don't
you
like
know
it.
what?
People are,
Sorry, go ahead, Chris. Finish it. Finish it.
no, no,
Finish
no.
it.
I was gonna say like obviously most people don't like it. I mean, I don't really I don't really care. Like, it doesn't affect me that much because my team is so bad that it hasn't actually affected my team in the AFC yet. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I like Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if that's a hot take. I know people aren't a fan of like the flopping, but I've always liked Patrick Mahomes. So
Well, you know what's funny is when he first came in the league, everybody was obsessed with him. It's because they start winning
exactly,
that people get pissed off. I'm
exactly.
like, I
Yeah,
have his jersey. I love him.
yeah,
I think he's when he first came in and dropped 50 tutties in his first full year. I think it was his second year in the
yeah.
league. I was like, this dude's cold, bro. Like he's a next gen. You know, this is a weird reference. You ever watch Cars 3, Chris? You know, like the new
Yeah,
electric car or something comes in Jackson's
yeah,
store. It's like he's literally a
yeah.
new breed of quarterback. He was a new breed and changed the game entirely, in my opinion. So I think it's great for the sport. Mahomes is just the GOAT. I mean, he's probably the GOAT, or I guess you could say GOAT of the new era for right now,
He's
at
gonna
least.
retire as the second best quarterback of all time, most
Yeah.
likely. So
Yeah,
we could
most
just say that
likely.
right now. And if he gets more rings, he's certainly
He's
in that
definitely the
GOAT
GOAT.
discussion, depending on where he
Um,
ends up. If he has more rings
yeah,
than
for
Brady,
sure.
obviously. So
For sure. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, you talk about NFL media and all that stuff, dude. They're drooling over the concept of a three-peat. I mean, it's never happened before.
oh yeah, they are.
That's a big thing to me is getting our first three-peat. I'm not saying Chris and I don't know anything, and we say this all the time. We don't know what goes on in the NFL, like with the commission, all that nonsense. But like, dude. You can't say I don't know. There's definitely a lot of questionable calls in that Texans Chiefs game. There's always questionable calls in Chiefs games that I've seen every single week. I could point one out. I feel like, and Jawan Taylor is either a false starting or holding every single play. So they only call a fraction of them, in my opinion. But whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, we'll leave it at that, honestly, because I don't want to say anything controversial. But yeah, the Chiefs still play well. That's plain and simple. That's all you got to say. Um, Now this next game I want to get into, Chris. You and I split on last week. You had Baltimore. I had Buffalo.
You did.
I don't think this game could have been closer. It's absolutely insane. This was probably the most entertaining game I've watched all year. There were a lot of couple shootouts that I liked too, but this game had a little bit of everything, and I loved it. Um, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, probably two MVP front runners. Lamar was definitely ahead. Um, Now I talked last week and I said whoever loses the turnover battle loses the game indefinitely. Whichever QB messes up, right, it is done for, right? And Chris and I kind of dove into how Derrick Henry was kind of the threat on the Ravens more than Lamar for the Bills, right? I mean, we've seen Henry in the past destroy Buffalo single handedly when he was on Tennessee, when he was on Baltimore. It doesn't matter. He did it himself. Um, Now he had about 86 total yards, I think, which isn't bad, but it's not good for Derrick Henry. So they kind of contained him well, which led to okay, now we got to rely on Lamar a little bit. And like Chris said, Chris will talk about it a little bit later with their run game. But they threw the ball a lot. Lamar made mistakes. He had a fumble, he had an interception, and it turned into Buffalo points. As simple as that. They took points whenever they could, even if it was a field goal. I think it was like 10 points they got off of the turnovers. But Josh Allen protected the ball well. He didn't force anything crazy. He used his legs a lot, like he always does. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, I believe. Um, and the Bills, I feel like, did exactly what the Ravens should have done, which was run the ball a lot more, and they ran it a lot more effectively. Maybe it wasn't that big of a difference, but they ran it better than the Baltimore. Um, but yeah, I love what Josh Allen did. I already said I picked them to win the whole thing. I said whoever wins this game wins Super Bowl. Um, I love both these guys. I think this is Josh Allen's year finally. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of question marks with some of the skill players for Lamar, but also Lamar himself. I mean, he's definitely beating himself up a little bit after the game, which is valid, but he shouldn't be too hard on himself. He was trying to do too much, which is fair. I mean, they need him to, but you got to know when to throw the ball away sometimes. Carrying it on that fumble was not good. Um, yeah, and throwing that pick was just, not on the same page with his receiver. So yeah, Buffalo's defense stepped up well. Lamar maybe a little more composure, maybe another skill position player for him, another receiver wouldn't be bad. Because he might need a number one guy, honestly, like a big body receiver. Um, but yeah, we'll talk about Mark Andrews in a bit, Chris. I want to hear what you say about the overall game first, though, because Mark Andrews was a big factor in this game.
Well, before I dive into it, let me just ask you, why did the Ravens lose the 2023 AFC Championship? If you could pin it to one thing, what did they not do?
It didn't run the ball.
They did not run the football. So,
Yep.
and they were down 11 points at halftime, right? Wasn't it 21-10 this year at halftime?
Yep. It was 21-10.
I know that Derrick Henry got a little more involved in the second half, but if you're down 11 points, you can't start running the football like that. I know that
Yeah.
there's plenty of time, but the Bills are a threat to go score as soon as you give the ball up. So you have to throw the football there. I don't understand the game plan for the second year in a row. Like, you have to stick with Derrick Henry, even if he's getting bottled up a little bit um, in the first quarter.
Yeah.
You just can't veer off of him and move to this air raid offense. Their pass offense works because of the threat of the run. It's not the other way around.
Right.
The pass doesn't open up
Right.
the run. The run opens up the pass for the
Open up the
Ravens.
pass.
So I don't understand the game plan. Again, I
I
don't.
get that.
The Bills played sound football. Credit to them. They haven't turned the football over much this year. They deserve to be in the AFC Championship. Josh Allen is a great quarterback. McDermott's had a really good year. Their defense is good. The Ravens beat themselves, I think, more so than the Bills beat the
I agree.
Ravens, and that was
I agree with
because
you.
of turnovers and lack of execution. I don't understand what Lamar was doing on that fumble. Everyone is just screaming, "Throw it away, throw it away." He's been in the league too long to make a mistake like that. Like, it's the
Especially in a big
AFC
time
divisional
game.
round.
Yeah.
Like, you're driving down the field with a chance to, I believe it was to tie the game, or it was
Yep.
early on in the game. You can't do that. I don't understand, the pressure he puts on himself. I get it, but like, at some point you have to minimize it a little bit and just play it
Yeah.
like it's a regular game, because he doesn't make those mistakes in the regular season. I think he only turned the ball over like less than 10 times, and he had two like in the first half. So it's just not something that you can have if you want to beat a good team like Buffalo, and especially if they advance and you want to beat a team like Kansas City. Like, you can't be careless with the football.
Yep.
And I know we said we were going to get into it, but it sucks for Mark Andrews because he's a Ravens legend and he's the all-time touchdowns leader. But
Well,
you know,
yeah.
he's probably going to be forever remembered for his 2024 AFC divisional with the drop, the
And the
fumble,
fumble.
and then obviously the drop two-point conversion. I don't understand what he was doing on the fumble, not cutting to the outside part of the field where it was nothing but green grass, and he ran right over the middle. And then, you know, the two-point conversion. You probably run that play 10 times, he catches it 9 times. It's just
Yeah.
unfortunate, but that's the kind of day he was having. And it sucks for Lamar to have that crazy drive to get them down there and score, and then for Mark Andrews to just throw it away. But here's the thing. Here's the thing that I don't even think they should have been in that position, because
Mm.
when they scored to make it 21-19, it was still very early in the game, and they were each going or in the second half, and both teams were going to get multiple possessions. So I don't think you had to go for the 2 points to tie it there, because what does a tie do for you? Like, if the Bills, let's say they go kick a field goal, you still need a touchdown to beat them. I know the field goal would have tied it, but I don't understand going for 2 that early in the second half, and then it came back to bite them because then if they had gone for the 1 point and they just needed the extra point at the end of the fourth
They
quarter,
could have
then they
tied
would have
it.
just done
Yeah.
that and gone to overtime.
Yep.
So that's on Harbaugh. Um, I don't think that was the right move at all. Even if it worked, I still would have questioned the logic there because there's so much
Yeah.
time left in a 1 point game. You don't need to do that. It's not like I'd understand it if it was the fourth quarter and you were only going to get a possession or two left, but you don't need to do that. And I know the analytics in the NFL say that like when you're down by a score like that and you're going to need the 2 point conversion at some point, you do it earlier in the game. That way you know what you need at the end. Like, I think in the playoffs, you almost throw the analytics out the window and you have to play like fundamental sound football with logic and
Yeah.
reasoning and not with numbers, honestly. So I didn't like that call. I think the Ravens are going to have a long off season because you got to think about the missed opportunity they had this year. Like Derrick Henry's not getting any younger. So
No.
they still really, to your point, like Zay Flowers is a really good player. They haven't been able to put that number one receiver out there for
I
Lamar.
mean, yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, the
I
Bills though,
wanted to
I
bring up
think
a
this
couple of
is
things after you make this comment. Sorry. Finish your last
no, no,
comment.
no,
I just
go
wanted to
for
add
it.
a
No,
couple
no, no,
things
go
before we
for it.
veer off. I just
I
want
was
to
just
talk
gonna
about
say,
Mark
like,
Andrews
Bills
too.
Chiefs is like probably the championship that a lot of people wanted to see. So
Yeah, I mean, well, everybody honestly wanted to see Bills Ravens championship. Obviously, it's not possible with Chiefs being number one. I mean, everybody wants it to be switched up a little bit. But yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I think Andrews had probably one of his worst games of his career. Um, it's Lamar was on this line saying it's like it's not on you, it's on the team kind of thing. It's like you're not the only one out there, which is very true though. You're relying on Mark Andrews for this drop. And I look at that drop, Chris. I'm 50 blaming it on Andrews. I'm 50 blaming it on Lamar. The pass was Andrews is wide open for a flat route. It was a flat route right to the corner. It was pretty easy, like dump off. And he's throwing it behind Andrews on that play. Now, should he come up with it? Yes, 100% he should. It's not even an easy throw, though. It's just, you got to just put it in the breadbasket. It's not that difficult. So that was another thing I feel like Lamar kind of messed up on as well. Um, like Andrews had to kind of turn and fall down as he's catching it, and it made it probably as difficult as it possibly could be for a 2 point conversion wide open pass. Now, um, Derrick Henry surprisingly got faster with age. I don't know how that works, but yeah, you're right, Chris. He's not getting any younger. You never know when he's going to kind of fall off a cliff. I'm not saying he will next year, but you're going to have this short window with a veteran Derrick Henry and a powerhouse running back. Give him the friggin' ball 25, 30 times. That's what he was made for. Look what the Eagles did, and they won the game. All they did was feed Barkley. If you feed Derrick Henry, you keep Josh Allen off the field more and more, right? But yeah, they didn't do that. They went into panic mode for no reason. And they kind of flipped the script, like you said, Chris. All they did was throw the ball in the first half and then said, oh, we're down. Let's just try and run it with Derrick Henry now. No, flip it around. Because if you put Derrick Henry in that situation at the beginning, maybe he is getting banged up and stopped a couple of times, but he'll break a couple eventually. And you keep Josh Allen off the field. It's not that difficult, right? But I want to say, Deontay Johnson, this whole thing with him, I'm so confused about because he got traded to the Ravens and did nothing, then went to the Texans and then came back to the Ravens and still did nothing on both teams. So I don't know where he was, but he was on a big rise. He had a couple great years to the Steelers, went to the Panthers and was balling out, and then he just fell off a cliff. I was like, this guy could have been a great number one for Lamar, just another possession receiver for him to have. But he went nowhere. I don't know what would have happened. Because I like Bateman, I like Zay Flowers, but if you put those guys on quarter two and threes instead of quarter ones, Lamar would be balling so easily. So I don't know what's going to happen in the offseason. They need to find somebody. Now, is it Devontae Adams? I don't know. That's just another veteran receiver that could happen unless Devontae's going to stay with Aaron Rodgers. That's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I think the Bills played safe, simple football. They protected the ball very well, and they deserve to win this game. Like you said, Chris, the Ravens beat themselves. Um, I I talked about last week. I said whoever messes up at quarterback will lose this game for the team. I think Lamar threw this game away very early on, as close as it was. I like Josh Allen a lot. I think Chris and I can have a debate on who's the MVP because I think Chris believes it's Lamar this year. I believe it's Josh, but yeah, that's a whole other conversation. Um, but yeah, I like what Buffalo's done. I think they have a real shot against Kansas City this year, like a legit shot against Kansas City. Um, but yeah, the Ravens have a lot of question marks there now. So we're gonna see what happens. I hope I love Lamar. I really do like him a lot. He's just like Chris said, he's hard on himself, and yet there's no improvement. You know, maybe it's he's being too hard on himself. Um, so yeah, we'll see what happens. But sorry, I didn't want to
No,
yell,
I
but
actually
like
want to make a point about something
go
you
for it.
said. So, two things. One, the Deontay Johnson. Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's a toxic individual because he's the amount of teams he's been on this season. And I think the whole thing with the Ravens claiming him after the Texans cut him was just so that I don't think there was any chance he was going to play. But when he signs with someone in free agency, I think the Ravens will get a compensatory pick for that, I think. So
Yeah,
I think that's the only reason he got added back to the team was simply just so they could get a draft pick. And then Lamar, obviously, like the regular season has improved year by year, and I think he's going to win his third MVP just because MVP is not it's not really most valuable player. It's who has the best stats, for the most part.
yeah,
And Lamar has better stats than Josh Allen. So
yeah,
he's AP first team All Pro. I think all that's working in his favor. We'll know next week, I believe, when they do the NFL honors. But it's just the playoff performances just haven't been there. And I don't know if it's like internal pressure or what's going on because I hate to say it because we're huge Yankees fans, but like it's the same deal with Aaron Judge recently. It's just the playoff struggles.
yeah.
Like no matter how good you are in the regular season or how many MVPs you won, people are only going to remember you for your playoff success. And both of those guys are obviously still in their prime with time to turn it around. But for now, that's the narrative they're going to have to live with.
Yep. Stud regular season players choke in the playoffs. Um, I think it's more of a mental. It's really a mentality thing, Chris. I know that this is like a little bit different than. I know we want to talk about coaches real quick. I just want to make this last point. Um, I've studied in school a lot about sports psychology and what it takes for players to be, like I think like for players to be so good in the playoffs compared to like the regular season or a championship game compared to the regular season or a preseason, whatever it is. The players that are the most winning quarterbacks, baseball players, whatever sport you want to look at. It could be in the Olympics as well. The players that win the most and the athletes that win the most are the ones that treat every single game like any other game. Okay? Mahomes treats a preseason game like it's a Super Bowl. Um, let's see. For example, I don't know. I'll put it out random example. Derek Jeter puts batting practice like a real game. It does not matter, right? These guys are all about repetition. When they do it so much, it's all the same to them. To me, Lamar puts so much pressure on himself in the playoffs. Now I get it's a bigger deal, but if you make such a bigger deal out of it, you are going to stretch yourself more, overthink, and not play your best game and just completely freeze. And that's what I think he's been doing the past couple of years, as well as a guy like Aaron Judge. If you want to use that example again. But yeah, I think he needs to just realize it's football. Play the game you played all year round. Okay, there's no different. It's no different. It's a regular game. Whatever happens, happens. If you play your game, you will win though, because we see it in the regular season every year. If he learns to just relax and play the football he knows how to play, the Ravens would be unstoppable in the playoffs. So we'll see what happens. I love him a lot, but he has had a lot of struggles. So yeah, in the last like 10, 15 minutes, we'll veer off into the coach carousel, I guess you could say. Chris, you wanna talk about the confirmed coaching signings right now? And we'll talk
Yeah,
about
we'll
how we
jump
think
into
about
it.
it.
So obviously, Mike Vrabel went to the Patriots like a week or two ago, and it seems like he's just about finished putting his staff together. He's going to bring Josh McDaniels back for his third stint as the Patriots offensive coordinator. He's not like this world-renowned offensive genius, but he's had success there. He's comfortable there, and I think just the familiarity is just something that was valued. So he should do a decent job. I don't know if this is like the best staff for Drake May's development per se, but
Yeah,
I do think it raises the floor of the Patriots, at least so that they're fundamentally sound. And um, I believe they hired someone from the Lions to be their defensive coordinator. It's the defensive line coach. I'm not too sure of his name off the top of my head, but I just saw that quickly glancing this morning. So the Lions lose another coordinator or position coach. So it's going to be interesting to
yeah,
see what Dan Campbell does in his first. This is the first time he's really going to have to rebuild that staff since he's been hired. So a lot of
yep,
pressure on him. Big offseason for the Lions internally. Um, Yesterday or Monday, we had the official breaking news that Ben Johnson is making the move from Lions offensive coordinator to Bears head coach for a whopping $13 million per year. That's a crazy salary for a coach,
wow,
but the
wow,
Bears had to wow him because the Raiders wanted him. I think everyone with an opening pretty much wanted him. The
yeah,
Raiders, Tom Brady was working hard to get him, but I think this is the spot that most people wanted to see Ben Johnson go and see what he could do with Caleb Williams. Hopefully, for
yeah,
Caleb's sake, like this jumpstarts his development because we see why Jaden Daniels is so good, and that's because he has Cliff Kingsbury. Like it's really important to have a really good play caller and coach around the quarterback. So I think this is a good move for Chicago. It's one that they had to make. Like if it doesn't work in 3 or 4 years, like no one's gonna get mad at them for making the move because it was the move that everyone thought they should make. So they identified their guy. I think we all thought throughout this process that's who they wanted, and they were able to get it done with a crazy salary. So exciting times for
I,
Chicago for Caleb Williams. I hope it works out, but I am a little
yeah,
skeptical. Just that's just my
yeah.
feelings on it.
No, I agree. I agree. I'll cover. I want to cover Vrabel and McDaniels real quick. Just go back to
Yeah.
real quick. Vrabel, I like a lot. I agree with you, Chris. Not the best with Drake May. That's my opinion on that. That's as plain and simple as I get because I think you explained that well. Josh McDaniels, I do like just because of his experience with that Patriots offense with Tom Brady. So I think he'll be able to elevate Drake May a little bit. Maybe not the entire offense, but maybe Drake May is the one that elevates that. So it's not a bad signing. Um, Now I'll look at the Bears real quick, okay? Chris, I'm sure you know this stat. You know that I think it was October 13th is what I'm looking at, 2024, was the day, I believe was the day after the Texans and Bears play each other. And I think you know where I'm going with this. Where Stroud
Yeah.
went up to Caleb and was like, oh, good stuff, just keep that up or whatever. And kind of babying him or being like that mentor. And Caleb gave him that like all right, that's how you're gonna talk, kind of. Like, I'm not saying there was no disrespect there or whatever, but Caleb took it as like, And ever since that, there's 8 games. Maybe he didn't have crazy amount of touchdowns. He threw 0 picks until the Seahawks game, I believe. Right? He threw like 1 pick in the last 8 games or something like that. He was either 0 or 1. Okay, so Caleb has a lot of potential. He plays very smart with protecting the football. Now, Ben Johnson, I love. Okay, he's a crazy offensive minded guy. Reminds me of like Cliff Kingsbury, kind of very creative, I guess you could say. So we'll see what he can do. However, goes back to the line, dude. The Bears got nobody. Okay, Caleb. How many times did we see Caleb sprinting for his life back there and almost getting killed? And if Ben Johnson could build that line in the offseason, and yeah, the Bears have a great offense, and they've already had a decent defense for the past couple of years. So that's all I got to say about that. Is if Ben Johnson can find a way to get some, like some solid offensive line play, this offense is gonna be totally fine in my opinion. I like Ben Johnson a lot. I trust him. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I just obviously they need to continue to support Caleb Williams, and that line is obviously a big piece of it, and work on his pocket presence and footwork. But just looking around the league at some of the other openings. So today we found out that Liam Cohen is withdrawing his name from the Jaguars head coaching search, and he's going to stay and become one of the highest paid coordinators in Tampa Bay.
Yep.
It seems like the Jaguars are having a tough time attracting anyone because they won't fire their GM, Trent Baalke, who's been there for like 6 years. So if you're not going to fire your GM, you're going to have to settle for, second tier candidates. So Robert Sala is like firmly in the mix, which is crazy to think that he's going to get another job right after getting fired from the Jets, but we'll see. That would be really interesting, and I actually do think that the Jets play the Jaguars next year, so, of course they do, right? Like, that's how these things go.
Yep.
And then the Cowboys, no one really knows what they're doing, like, they're operating on their own timeline where they think that they're, like, this elite NFL franchise. I think there's, like, a little bit of delusion from Jerry and what the
Jerry.
Cowboys think that they are versus the perception that everyone else has. Like, right now, everyone kinda looks at the Cowboys as, like, a joke. I mean, they draft really well for the most part. That's why they've been able to make the playoffs these last couple of years, but, like, they don't have a real GM. Jerry Jones is their GM, and, like, it takes like, who's gonna wanna go there, right? Like
Nobody.
like, they got Mike McCarthy, but that was his 2nd job as a head coach, and Jason Garrett wasn't, like, a hot shot when they got him. He was obviously successful there, but, like, do we think, like, a Ben Johnson would have wanted to go to the Cowboys? I certainly don't think so.
No.
They don't they have, like, no money because it's all tied up in CD and Dak, and they're about to pay Micah, which is fine, like, you pay your own players, but they don't have a lot of flexibility, and I don't know, maybe they're gonna hire Kellen Moore from the Eagles or Brian Schottenheimer, their offensive coordinator, but whoever they get, it doesn't feel like it's gonna be, like, this hire that inspires a lot of confidence throughout themselves or throughout the NFL. And then that leaves us
Yeah.
with if you wanna jump in, yeah, go ahead,
Well,
and
I just
I'll
wanted to make
wrap
a
up the
quick
rest
comment.
of it
I
too.
think it's real. I just wanted to make a quick comment about Jerry. I think he's the main factor in this. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious to be fair, but Jerry, I don't know. I think he's too controlling, and as an owner, you can't have that. We talked about this before. I'm like, you got to find a GM that can a GM that attracts the coach, and the GM's got to be attracted to Jerry in the sense of like, he's got to tell Jerry, "Yo, I can do this. You can relax now, okay?" Because Jerry is what, like almost 90 or something like that. I don't know, like 80 something. You can't be doing this for that long, Jerry. I don't think he understands that. The owner should. Although the owner can have a little bit of impact, it can't be like you. The owner, Jerry's basically saying he's the GM. You can't have that. So I don't know who they bring in. Um, all these stinking rumors about Deion Sanders or whatever. I don't like it. So we'll see what
Yeah, I
happens
don't think
though.
that's happening. I think that's been
No,
pretty
but
much put to bed. But
yeah,
yeah, so that leaves us with the two openings. We got the Saints and the Jets. So, last 24 hours or so, like it's more than just smoke. Like there's been legit reports from just about every legit Jets beat reporter that Aaron Glenn and Lance Newmark are going to be the next
yeah,
general manager and head coach of the Jets. Like we're still waiting for that pen to paper announcement. So I guess something crazy could happen, but again, this morning I've still seen that the expectation is that those two will end up leading the Jets into this new era. Um, Hopefully that gets done today. If it's gonna get done today or tomorrow, just so it can be put to bed and we can actually start talking about it and seeing the direction that the Jets are gonna go in. Because obviously for me, that's
yeah,
very exciting being a Jets fan and dealing with these last 2 years where like we went from a ton of hype, like probably the most I've ever had as a Jets fan, to just being back in the same spot that we always are, which is like a perpetual rebuild. Um, Once Mike Vrabel was hired, Aaron Glenn immediately became my top candidate for the Jets. I think
yeah,
it would be really cool to see him come back to where he started his NFL career. For those who don't know, he was a first round pick of the Jets back in the 90s. And then he started his, coaching career at the Jets as an amateur scout. So I think it would be fitting for him to come back home and try to right this ship. I hope it gets done. Everything I'm reading seems like it's gonna, but I don't want to dive full into it. And then, tomorrow we wake up and something happens. So
right,
now just gonna hope that it gets done. I like what I've read so far, that it seems like it's likely and it's close, but anything can happen. So that leaves us with the Saints, and the Saints' top target is also Aaron Glenn. So that's why this is like a little scary, but like a little interesting to watch if you're a Jets fan, because it's like, okay, well, the Saints have the opening, and he's supposed to meet with them later this week. Like, what's going on here?
yeah,
Like, are we just working out financials or all that stuff? But for the Saints, if they don't get um, Aaron Glenn, I think Mike McCarthy is definitely in the mix there.
yeah. I was
Former
gonna
former
say,
offensive coordinator, former head coach for the Packers and the Cowboys. I think that would be a solid hire for them. But interesting to see where they go if Aaron Glenn is actually off the table. And same with the Jets. I mean,
Well,
the Jets don't really have a backup plan right now. So I would be interested to see what the pivot would be if he's somehow off the table.
I'll be honest with you, Chris. He's not going to the Saints. There's no way. I'll tell you why. In my opinion, at least, if it's true about Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams leaving, right? The Saints have a lot of question marks with Derek Carr there, and you got Spencer Rattler who showed a little bit of promise. Whatever. There's a lot of question marks there. To be fair, too, about quarterback. But Aaron Glenn can go to the Jets, and he gets to pick his quarterback if Rodgers isn't there, right? Whether he drafts or signs, whatever it is, but he has that decision along with his team, obviously. I don't think have the Saints have too many question marks, if that makes sense. If that's what I'm trying to say, Aaron Glenn has the chance to make a statement with New York, and say, guys, here's what we're gonna do. Here's who I'm gonna pick because I like him a lot. He's gonna be the franchise guy. I love obviously he's gonna love that defense more than the Saints, in my opinion. I think that Jets defense is really talented on paper, and obviously him being a defensive minded guy, quite frankly, that's just a layup for him. Why wouldn't he go there and make that defense top three again? Um, so I think the Jets are a more well-rounded team. If I'm Aaron Glenn and I'm not just in it for the money and wanting to win, I'm looking at the Jets for sure and saying this is the most logical team for me to go to. Also because of his background, like you said, Chris, being a former Jet for many years. Um, yeah, I like Mike McCarthy to the Saints, though. I think McCarthy is the kind of guy the Saints need. He is a very winning coach in the regular season. We've talked about that a couple times. Definitely has struggled over the years, Green Bay or Dallas, with winning in the playoffs. He obviously won a Super Bowl with Rodgers and stuff like that. He's a good veteran coach. I think he could help the Saints a lot, so he'll be a great addition. But yeah, I think Aaron Glenn easily goes to the Jets, dude. I think that'll make every Jets fan happy, or at least most of them. Uh, I think you guys deserve somebody with that kind of. I think Dan Campbell is going to make his own kind of coaching tree in the future. Like that different mentality kind of guy. So he brings that great energy. I think he's great for New York. So yeah, I think you'll grab him and you'll have a good couple of years with him as long as or a good. He might be the answer. This is bold of me to say, Chris. I know how many times the Jets have said these things, and even the Giants have said, "Oh, he's the answer," whatever. He's got a lot of potential, in my opinion.
I think there's a lot to like about him, and I don't want to spend too much more time on this until it's official, and then I would love to take a deep dive in on the whole situation. But I think he has a lot to like as far as being, an overall CEO head coach as opposed to being, specific to one side of the ball because like when you look at him, he's not some like defensive mastermind. Like they call the Rex Ryan and Robert Saleh defensive masterminds, and there
Right.
wasn't much focus on the offense. Like Glenn just seems like we use this term in sports a lot, but especially in football, a leader of men. And I think that's what the Jets need. Like this was a tough year. Like the morale is really down. There's a lot of questions throughout the organization on the player side, specifically about who's going to lead us. Cause like you go into 2023 and you just got four-time MVP Aaron Rodgers. Like he chose to come to the Jets. Like I don't think they get enough credit for that in the sense that
Yeah.
they built a roster where a future Hall of Famer looked at them and was like, "That's where I want to go because I think I have a chance to win."
Yeah.
And it kind of got derailed with the Achilles, and then last year was kind of just a wash. Honestly, like it was just a terrible year. So I think Aaron Glenn would kind of rejuvenate the fan base, but specifically the players.
Yeah.
Hopefully by the end of the day, or maybe tomorrow, or by the end of the week, this is pen to paper official, and we can jump on a pod and maybe talk about it. Maybe if it goes down tonight, maybe I hop on tomorrow, even if you can, and just give a quick rundown because I'm excited to
Yeah.
talk about the Jets
Yeah. We
eventually.
could
So
also,
we'll see
I
though.
mean, we could also talk about on Friday. I mean, we're gonna have a very special guest who I will
Yeah,
say
we
is
can.
he's a big Jets fan. We'll talk about that. Also, probably next week before NFL honors, Chris and I will make our predictions for awards and who we think deserves each award. So everybody tune in for that. It's gonna be really interesting. We are on TikTok now. That's a big announcement. We're gonna start.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and convert these audios onto TikToks. Everybody, go follow us there if anybody is interested. I'll probably make an Instagram too. We'll make an Instagram. So we're gonna try and get on as many platforms as possible and just spit out content. So we appreciate everybody listening. Enjoy the games this weekend. We're looking forward to them. We're gonna be making our picks on Friday with our special guest, our first special guest ever. So it's gonna be a very fun episode. So tune in for that. Appreciate everybody for listening and have a good week. Take care.